SuperCaZt.
And welcome back to the SuperCaZt. This is your host, Steve Z. And we have a SuperCaZt along with us. And to introduce that, we have none other than the one and only...
The Super Foch, the man who put the super in SuperCaZt. But let's not get it twisted here, folks. The man who put the super in anything super is what we're talking about here. If you don't even know what you're listening to, this is the SuperCaZt where we talk about, finally, people probably been wondering when we would talk about this film, but we're talking about it today, and that is Superman, the movie in 1978. Man, you already know I'm excited about talking about this film, but what are your feelings talking about this film, going into it?
I'm excited about it too, just because this is a film that, I don't know what it is about it, every time I watch it, it just gets better. And that's how you know when you're watching a good movie, is when that happens. You just have a deeper appreciation, more things kind of stand out to you, and you just love it just a tad bit more. It's like a good wine. It ages very well, and that's this film for me.
You and I have grown up to many different superhero films, obviously, especially in the last several years. But this film that we're talking about here, Batman '89, these films really marked our childhood and really kind of introduced the characters. And we've already talked about Batman before, and so we really want to give Superman his due, and no better way to do that than Superman '78. This film came out before either one of us are born, by the way, so we found this film, a few years later. We talk about our introduction to films and stuff. Do you remember watching this film for the first time? Because I've been racking my brain all day, and I can't remember the very first time I saw this film. How about you?
I think I do. It was on television. It was on the Disney Channel.
Yeah.
And I really remember that first
right.
half of the film really well, up until where he catches the bullet. And then I think the later half I watched a little bit later. I don't think I watched the whole film all at once at the same time.
Yeah.
The time I really originally sat down and watched the whole thing from start to finish was much later. I think I was actually in high school or college. It was right before Superman Returns came out. And I just wanted to give it the good college try. I was at your house. I watched it. And I liked it. But that being said, this movie really didn't click for me until a couple of years ago when we watched it. And that's when I was like, oh, this is amazing. And this past time I watched it, I was like, this is beyond amazing. Yeah. This is awesome.
And again, this is a film that really a lot of I've heard a lot of filmmakers talk about. They reference. I think even Kevin Feige, who's the Marvel guy, talks about watching this film when they do films, and I think that's kind of interesting that they reference this film being a DC film. But that's the thing. Like this, when this film was made, there was no DC versus Marvel, at least the way we see it now. So this film is just a masterpiece, and I know that movie that term gets thrown out a lot, but I really think if you sit down and watch this film, as we have in the last couple days, it's a true masterpiece. Would you agree?
Definitely. I think it hits all the beats that any superhero movie would want to. And for me, when I'm visualizing it and watching it in my head, it's like the perfect superhero movie.
Yes.
While watching it this time, it's a combination of the sort of Richard Donner framing, but also the Jeffrey Unsworth, his little thing that he's bringing to the table.
Yeah.
But to me, I imagine comic book panels when I'm watching this movie. It's not doing too much with the camera. It's more like the action's happening with the characters moving and all that. And to me, I just love that. I think it's like a comic book come alive, and I think it's just perfect.
That's something I thought about exactly watching it this last time. And there's been good other Superman movies since then, that kind of thing. But this one in particular, I think, is the tentpole movie simply because of what you said. This film is shot almost exactly like a comic book. In fact, it opens with a kid reading a comic book, and it just seamlessly goes from the panels of a comic book to the floating above the Daily Planet, and then you get into the opening credits, which we haven't even started yet with the credits and the music and all that. But brilliantly done. But there's just so much to this film that we could talk about, and really gonna try to make this as long as our normal episodes. But there's just so many with the making of this film, the writing of this film. Of course, was originally written by Mario Puzo, who, if you know your film history, was the man behind the Godfather novel. Was not familiar with Superman as much, and he went to the DC offices to talk to some of the comic book writers, and he was like, "Oh, this is a Greek tragedy," and kind of got him into it. But even still, they hired Tom Mankiewicz, who, again, if you know your movie history, was writer on several of the Bond films, to kind of even take his script, Mario Puzo's script, and doctor it up and add some more jokes. I think a lot of the joke stuff started flying to kind of make it a little bit lighthearted, because even by those standards, it was a pretty kind of a dark film at that point. But other than that, I mean, there's just so many good things to talk about this film. Anything stood out to you as far as the production or the look of the film or even the sound of the film that you want to touch on as we get into kind of the meat and potatoes, as it were?
That's a lot of stuff to contemplate.
I know, man.
I would say the big thing to bring about that I wanted to touch upon earlier was
Sure.
the tone of the film.
Yeah.
I think it's perfect because, as you were just saying, the first part of the film is very serious.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff on Krypton. I mean, you just basically get out your English teacher, see if it's an iambic pentameter as we're looking at Shakespeare, you know?
Yeah.
So we have that going, but then all of a sudden, halfway through the movie, it becomes a comic book, and it's like the tone is a lot more lighthearted and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's perfect. I know some people would say, "Why don't you just pick one and stick with it?" But I'm a huge fan of shifting tones when it's done right. I mean, you know that we talked about several Tarantino films on here, and talked about Jojo Rabbit a few weeks back.
Right.
I just think if you can do it, then do it. If you can handle that serious stuff,
Right.
and also have some humor and some lighter sort of mood in there, then go for that. I think you should. I think any film that can accomplish that and still come off be incredible, then it's just a very good film in my opinion.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, if you're trying to depict two different worlds, you open on Krypton, which is obviously a fictional world. You got to make it a certain way, though. You got to make it different than Metropolis, which is technically fictional, but it's based on a real place and everything kind of thing. But I think you have to make those worlds, or even Smallville. There's quite a bit of Smallville, but I think you make each one of those its own unique kind of place. You kind of make the Krypton stuff kind of Shakespeare-y, kind of old English, as it were, and then you kind of make Smallville kind of the yuck, kind of country bumpkin kind of thing, and then you make Metropolis what it is. So I think you do have to have those specific tones to kind of differentiate where you are within the story.
Yeah. And I don't think you should just gloss over the Smallville
No, not at
segment,
all.
because to me that's actually one of my favorite parts of the whole film.
Yeah.
Because not only do you see Clark when he's a teenager, but I think this scene with him and Jonathan Kent is probably one of the most important scenes of this whole film.
Yeah.
And if you want to go there, I will go ahead and go there.
Go ahead, man. I will follow your lead, sir.
Yeah, because so
I know where you're going, so go ahead.
it's, to me, this is the most important scene in the whole film.
Yeah.
Just because you saw right before this, just to give you some precedent, Clark Kent just flexed. He just showed off, hey, I'm Superman. I'm tired of this crap.
Yep.
I'm tired of taking this crap from other people. I'm just going to run at the speed of light and pass this car or whatever and show off a little bit.
Exactly.
But his dad sits him down and says, yeah, Clark, it's more than just showing off, Like, you have to do this because you're here for a reason. It's all about being good to people and using your powers for good and all that. Sort of like a Spider-Man with great powers comes responsibility. So he has that. And then immediately after that, Jonathan Kent has a heart attack and he's dead. And to me, this is the most critical scene of Superman because Superman is...
He's supposed to be
not
super.
Superman yet, but Clark, he realizes, I have all these powers.
Yeah.
I have all this strength, everything that's given to me.
Yeah.
But I cannot save my dad at this moment.
Yeah.
And that comes back big time later in the film.
Yeah.
And it just shows you that this man, he's capable of a lot. He can help a lot. But he can't do it all. And I think that's just a very important scene of this whole film. And I think this Smallville part, it's a big part of what creates Superman into being the man that he is.
Exactly. I completely 100% agree with you. And watching that scene, I couldn't help. And I tried really hard not to let anything else influence me, but I couldn't help to think about how they approached this in Man of Steel. And of course, Jonathan Kent's played by the great Kevin Costner. And I thought it was interesting in Man of Steel, Kevin Costner's Jonathan Kent was almost like, you gotta hide yourself. You can't just... And I think it's kind of the same thing, but I felt like it was more of a deliberate, you can't be this guy. You can't go out there and play football because you'll run over people and you might kill somebody, kind of thing. And where he loses Jonathan Kent in a storm, and Jonathan Kent's like, no, you can't save me, because he basically told him not to. In this film, he couldn't save his dad because of a heart attack. But I think it's kind of the same thing. It's like, yeah, Superman's all super, but there's still things he can't do. And that's an interesting opening, and I know it's probably been debated as far as that goes. I really do like the Glenn Ford scene, and I agree. I think it's almost really, really sad because of how Glenn Ford knows he's about to die, and he goes, "Oh no," and then he just kills over, and then of course Clark's like, "I can't do anything," and it's such a powerful scene. And then to kind of go into the next scene where he kind of like, okay, I've done everything here I can. My dad's dead. I gotta, see what's out there in the world. And then you have this big, long tracking scene with Clark holding his mom, and they go off. I love that scene right there too, and how that looks as well.
Yeah, and it's you definitely see how the two sets of parents really made him into the man he is, and that's a pretty cool thing. Yeah, I guess his natural parents, then his adopted parents, both contributing to who he is, and he finally gets to meet them in the next scene. I guess he finally gets to go and get tutelage from Jor-El and all that. So I don't know. We're kind of going around it in a weird way, but
and we will, because there's just so much, like you said, and try to condense as much as we can this film, because it is such an epic, and there's just so much, and you don't think about it until you start breaking this film down, how much there actually is in this film.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole
plot wise,
there's a whole story about the film, but we're not going to spend too much on that.
No,
that's another show for another day, I guess. But we're just concentrating mainly on the film, and the film as it is, it has a lot of cool stuff. We just mentioned some great scenes in there, but let's go ahead and get into the cast a little bit, I guess.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
We've been mentioning the character Clark Kent a bunch. I guess we should probably go into the man who plays him, Christopher Reeve.
Oh man, yeah. The man who pretty much owns this role. I think everybody is always going to be fairly or unfairly compared to Mr. Reeve. And I don't know, man. Like his performance is just so genuine, and I think that's the thing that everybody talks about with him is it's almost like he's not acting. He's just kind of being a really good side of himself. And everybody that's ever talked about the man, Chris Reeve, says there's not much difference. And it kind of shows in his performance, doesn't it?
Yeah, he's very natural. Like, you forget this is an actor playing this person.
Yeah.
And I think what's amazing about this performance is all that he has to do with it.
Yeah.
So as Superman, he's confident. He's sure of himself. You
Yep.
never really see him rattled until the end.
Yeah.
And he's just the ultimate strength, and that's what Superman's all about. Is like, you do whatever to me, I don't care. I'm gonna win.
Yep.
And that's a big part of who he is. But then he has to play Clark Kent.
Yeah.
And Clark Kent is...
And that's the acting job right there, pal. To me, that is the acting job, because he has to be kind of clumsy. He's got to be kind of aloof. And he's just got to be, pretty much the complete opposite of Superman in a lot of ways. But even then, there is that goodness that shines through that I think is and was Christopher Reeve. I think whether he is Clark or whether he is Superman, I think Christopher Reeve was just this really just naturally great person. And, so whether he is being the goofball, the bumbling guy, or the man in the costume, I think there's a lot of similarity. And I just think, again, for that time period, they couldn't cast anybody better. And I think he's a big reason of why this movie is the masterpiece. I mean, yes, we talk about all these other things, and they obviously get their due. The director, Richard Donner, which his getting him to direct this movie is a great story. If you haven't heard about it, maybe we can talk about that later on, because it's a great story. But with Donner and just everybody, that had a hand in this film, I think none of it matters without Christopher Reeve. And I know I'm a complete fanboy saying that, and I will die on that hill, as it were, about that. But yeah, I don't think there's an argument to be made otherwise.
I don't have an argument. I think I'd make the argument how he was the best person you could cast for this, because he looks the part. He's a huge man, even though he does bulk up for this film.
He does.
Some weight.
Thanks to Darth Vader.
Yeah. David Prowse trains him, but we have that aspect. So, as I was saying, it's amazing. He's playing Superman, who's playing Clark Kent, and that's just really fun to see in a lot of scenes where he'll, especially like the one scene with Lois, where he kind of like takes off his glasses briefly, and he's like, should I tell her? Nah, better not.
See, that's why I got into watching the George Reeve show after seeing this film. And no offense to George Reeve, and God rest his soul and all that, but I always felt his Superman and Clark was weak compared to Chris, because they were so similar. He was just as sure of himself as Clark as he was Superman. There was no, and I don't know who to give that credit to with Chris. I don't know if Chris just understood that he had to be different, or if Donner was like, no, we gotta have a difference here because people are gonna know. I mean, I don't know how people didn't know that was Superman with George Reeve, because they were just very similar in the way they stood and everything. Whereas Chris, and again, we said it a minute ago, was just so different playing the two roles. And that's, again, a credit to Chris 100%.
Yeah, and one last thing I want to say that he adds to the part is, and this is something I did not appreciate until today, when I was thinking about it and I went back and watched some of the scenes, is the flying scenes.
Yes.
Is you often see people that do similar things with wires or pretending to fly, and it doesn't look natural. It looks like they're all stiff, and this is like, I'm kind of uncomfortable doing this. But Superman in this film is like, this is just my dude, man. I just fly.
Yeah. And
I think it's just amazing how elegant that Christopher Reeve can... Because you have to imagine, he's been doing this for hours and hours that day, shooting the same shot and over. He's not comfortable. But when it shows up in the film, you would never know that. You would never know that this man has been on these wires for hours straight, which is pretty amazing. Yeah, man. I mean, take a look at the end of the film. When he flies, and I say flies, into the scene, and he smiles at the camera,
That's Superman to me. I'm telling you, that is Superman, and I believe it. I know it's an actor and all that. I'm an adult. I understand the difference, but to me, there's just you have to almost suspend that disbelief, as it were, and say, no, that's Superman, and it's an emotional thing, even for me to think about right now because of what he ends up going through. And again, if you guys are not familiar with what Christopher Reeve went through in his 50s, by the way, he wasn't even that old at the point where he had his accident on a horse. That's something that I can't talk about because I get emotional. I already am right now. But to see that man that was on that was flying into that screen and smiling at the camera, that's Superman for me, man, and it always will be.
Yeah, and there's some awesome shots of that. Yeah, and I think it's more than just Chris. I mean, he's awesome, obviously.
Oh yeah.
But this film has a lot of great actors. I think
Without
the one that
doubt.
jumps to my mind is the foil to our Superman, and that's our Lex Luthor, played by the great Gene Hackman.
Oh man, he is so good in this.
Yeah, he's so smug and just. It's weird because he's kind of ruthless too. I mean,
He is.
He's great in his comedy that he has, because obviously a very comedic role. But just how he can shift from that to like, yeah, I don't care if I killed millions of people. Yeah, that's just what I do. I mean, that's as long as I get rich.
He doesn't care about Miss Tessmonger.
No, and he's so cold and just so evil.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you kind of like him.
Yeah.
And I think that's a pretty hard thing to pull off.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I kind of we haven't even mentioned Otis, played by the late great Ned Beatty, by the way, and he's probably one of my other secondary favorite characters in this film, just because he kind of sort of reminds me of a character I've actually played, and that's LeFou from Beauty and the Beast. You know how like Gaston is this bad guy, and LeFou is this like worshiper of Gaston. I think it's almost the same thing with Otis and Lex Luthor. Like, Otis worships Lex Luthor, you know, and just wants his approval. And even when he wants to have his own little area of the area,
Otisburg.
Lex is like, no, you can't have that. And he's like, okay, fine. And he erases it, and he's okay with that, just because Lex told him to. And I just think that's, really interesting.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how that Lex Luthor likes to have these two idiots around him at all times.
To make him smarter, yeah.
It makes him like, let me correct you, peons.
Yeah, exactly.
This is my real master plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's a criminal genius, and he likes to hang out with idiots. So he's just a great character. I love him. And the one scene that he and Chris Reeve have together, it's just really good.
Oh, it is.
And yeah, it's awesome.
My favorite thing, though, about Gene Hackman is, if you notice, if you know anything about the character in the comics and cartoons and whatnot, Lex Luthor is bald. Mm-hmm. Lex Luthor is not bald in this film until the last 5 minutes. And that's because Mr. Hackman did not want to shave his head. So they were like, okay, fine, you can do the whole movie with your real hair. And I think that is... Any other actor that was any worse than Gene Hackman, you'd be like, oh man, that's terrible. But you don't care about that. You don't care that Lex Luthor is not bald, but just because Gene Hackman is that good in this film.
Yeah, I think it actually adds to it because
me too.
They kind of give you a little foreshadowing earlier because you see Otis next to like a little sculpture with a wig on it, and I think it's just funny that Lex Luthor he's kind of feels bad that he's bald. He's just like, I gotta wear this wig all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, he wants to feel superior.
Yep, I agree with it. That adds to the whole I'm better than everybody mystique.
Yeah. So he's awesome.
Yeah.
Margot Kidder is Lois Lane. Any thoughts?
Margot Kidder as Lois Lane is, to me, she was Lois Lane for years, and she still is. I mean, I think she was great. I mean, yeah, she had her issues and all that kind of stuff, but she's also not with us anymore, so I don't want to speak too bad of her because I still think she plays this role as good as anybody could have at this point, and I think she's a great, the fact that she doesn't kind of see that Superman and Clark are two different people is kind of interesting. And, you know, actually at one time, years ago, I almost even didn't buy their romantic relationship. Because I felt like that Margot's Lois was a little too confident in herself. It was like too confident. And so I felt like that didn't mesh, especially with Chris's Superman. But I think they have their own thing, and I still like it, and I still believe in it, and I still think Margot's great in this film.
Yeah, I think it works just because, yeah, she's confident, and she's this Pulitzer-winning writer and all this.
Yeah.
But at the same time, some of that you have to imagine has to be an act. Because you can't be on all the time.
Could be, yeah.
And that's when she sees Superman, she's like, this guy's actually great. He's like genuinely great. He's an awesome dude. He's kind of like, you're around him and you just feel warm. And she kind of falls for that, so.
Well, and that's the thing, like you just said, like when she's around Clark and she thinks it's just Clark, she has that, you know, power, and, you know, she's tough and all this kind of thing. But then when Supes comes around, she fumbles and stuff, and she becomes the klutz. And I think that's an interesting thing, is that they kind of almost swap roles throughout the film a little bit. So
I think that's just great writing there.
Definitely.
Yeah, they did a good job with that one. I guess there's one last actor that we have to bring up. He's the first billed actor of the whole film. And that's Mr. Marlon Brando.
Mr. Godfather himself. And him and Gene Hackman is what got this movie made originally. Because Christopher Reeve was not a big star. He was definitely the unknown. Of course, this made him a star for sure. He was definitely the unknown. So to get the movie, the money for this film to be even made, they had to get Hackman and Brando. And we've talked about Hackman. But I want to get your thoughts on Brando as Jor-El and what you think of his performance in this film.
Well, I think it's one of those less is more thing. He's not in the film very much, but I think every line that he says is very impactful. He's doing a lot with very little. He's got a few mannerisms in there, but it's just his delivery of the lines, his confidence, his conviction, how he cares for his son that was just a little baby in the film. I feel it all. I think he's very good. We'll get into the controversy in a sec because I'm pretty sure you're going to bring it up. But yeah, what are your thoughts?
Well, Brando is one of those things. Like, he's a great actor, and I love that they got somebody like him to play Jor-El at this point because I think it was needed. And I'm with you. I think that had there been more of Brando, if we'd have seen more than a couple scenes that we see in him in the film, and then of course the stuff he talks, you hear him in the ship when Clark is sent over to Earth. I think that's pretty good. But yeah, I'm with you. I think the less is more kind of thing, and I think he does a good job. You know, there's been a lot of stories about Brando, you know, with this film and other films, so I don't want to get too much into it.
I gotta get your thoughts on the controversy though, on the cue cards. What do you think about that?
Look, I've heard that Brando does this in every film, so, you know, this is not news to me, and you know what, it doesn't really bother me that bad. It may bother another person if you ask him. It may bother you, I don't know. But for me, I don't see it. It's not that obvious. And he's Brando, so I think he's kind of earned the cue cards, in my opinion. So it doesn't really bother me that much.
That's me. I think it's part of his craft. I mean, he's this
exactly.
method actor. He's like, I am Jor-El. And he's got into that part. And he doesn't want to be bogged down by memorizing lines, because if he memorizes lines, they might come off not fresh.
Rehearsed.
So while he's reading them off the lines, he's like, this is me seeing this for the first time. I can react the way Jor-El would react. So I think that's pretty awesome. I know a lot of people slam it and say, hey man, you're getting paid $4 million for this role. You should memorize your lines. But I'm like, no, this is not how Marlon Brando acts.
And one of my favorite things he does in this film where he doesn't even speak is when Zod is yelling at him, and I mean he's just giving him down the road, and Jor-El's not even bothering to look at the guy. Like he's got his back to him, and he's like, "I'm about to send you to the Phantom Zone, so I don't even care what you're saying." And I think that is brilliant, and I think that's writing, obviously, but I think Brando pulls that off. Like, I know I'm better than you. I'm better than all you suckers. And maybe that's what he thinks in real life, and maybe he's earned it at that point. But I think that's part of the charm of that scene, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And like I said, he's the master of mannerisms.
Yes.
If you want to learn more about that, listen to our Godfather review.
Yes.
We got into that a lot.
Yeah.
So he's awesome. The cast is great. You already mentioned some of the minor characters, but everybody from Jimmy Olsen to Perry White, all them guys are great.
Very much so.
Few last elements we need to talk about when we're talking about this film, and we've mentioned Richard Donner a little bit. Why do you think he's the right man for the job here?
Because I think he understood the character of Superman. I think he understood the tone that needed to be this film. I think he understood the tones, as we mentioned, because you're going from Krypton to Smallville to Metropolis. I think he understood that from the get-go, that there needed to be almost three different movies in one film, kind of thing. And I think he believed a man could fly. He believed that Chris could fly. One of the things he says in a documentary, he said, "He made me believe a man could fly, and he makes me believe that he will walk again." Well, obviously we know that Chris did not walk again, and that's one of the saddest things. But I think that Richard Donner believed in Chris before anybody else did. And probably on that set, probably had to fight for Chris on that set. And I give him almost 50% credit with this, because again, he just had such a clear vision, and that shows in this film.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's a big part of what makes this film work. I think his fighting for these actors and for this cast, because some of them weren't ready to do it. I mean, even Gene Hackman was like, "I'm not shaving my mustache," all that stuff. So I think he really gave it his all. And if you ever read the story behind this man went through hell on this shoot. He was there for, I mean, it was a tough shoot for him and the lead actors. And he was in it from the get-go, giving 100%. That's why I really hated how the producers really screwed him.
Well, the thing is, they wanted to film two movies in one, and I don't know who would think that would ever be a good idea, much less...
No, Lord of the Rings worked pretty well.
This is true. But I don't think they gave Peter Jackson the crap that everybody gave Mr. Donner on this film, on these films, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, they kept coming to Donner and saying, "You're over budget." And he's like, "What's my budget?"
I mean,
they never would tell him. It's like, "You're taking too long." It's like, "What's my calendar?"
And as much as I love these films, and I do have a soft spot for the second one, Donner made most of the second one. Let's not even joke about that. You know, that's a Donner film. I know he's not given credit necessarily, but that's a Donner film.
Yeah.
That's Superman 1A, but whatever. We're gonna stay on course.
I just hate that his vision got lost in all this.
Yes, it did. That's my big thing.
Because it established a theme early on in the film. As I was mentioning with the Jonathan Kent scene earlier, and with there's a line from Jor-El where he says, "You cannot interfere with their history." But as we all know, spoilers, at the end of the film, Lois Lane dies.
Oof.
And Chris Reeve just lets loose this primal scream.
That scene used to bother me so bad, and it still does. But it used to almost scare me as a kid.
Oh, it is. It shakes your very soul. It's just rough. And then he does something that's unquestionable. And this is the part of the film when I was a kid I hated. So like, that's just a cop out. That's just such an easy fix. You just turn back time. But now I'm just like, it's brilliant. It's awesome. Because this was the one woman he loved, and he's willing to break all the rules for her.
He broke his one rule.
And he does that. But I think in Donner's version, that's supposed to happen in like the second film or something. There's major ramifications from it.
Yeah.
But they were just like, no, let's put it in the first film. It's a good ending. And I think that kind of like loosens it. I mean, if that turning back time would have unleashed the Zod and all those guys from the Phantom Zone, then yeah, the vision works.
Yeah.
But as it is right now, it makes it kind of like not as effective as it could have been under Donner's original vision.
And yes, Donner did get to go back and make his own version that they released on DVD, and I like it. It is good, and I I'm proud that Donner got to see that done before he passed away. But I think as the whole story as it was being made, I think it just it's definitely a disappointing thing, and the series goes into some crazy places, but we'll not discuss that today.
Just know that Richard Pryor comes in the third film. And J.W. Pepper makes it.
Yeah, if you guys don't know what we're talking about, just look it up. Google it. Superman 3. Have fun. But as far as this film goes, and the last thing we want to talk about, and this thing that I think I like as much as anything, is the music. John Williams. He has got the excellent score. He also understood the character of Superman. I mean, the opening number says Superman. I mean, it's just amazing. But that whole entire soundtrack, which is on streaming music, so go listen to that start to finish, not just the opener, but everything. I mean, it's just John Williams is just a master. I mean, I just don't know what to say any more than I've already said about him with Star Wars and everything else, right?
This is one of his best because you can listen to the score and you can imagine the scenes as they happen. You feel the excitement whenever it does the dun da da. And like the other night I was watching this, and that one scene where in the Fortress of Solitude where Superman appears in costume for the first time and we have that big triumph. I just started clapping. I'm the only person in the room. Everybody else is asleep in the house, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, that is awesome. Yeah. If you take the score away from this movie, it probably sucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think if you bring in anybody else in this film and they score it, it's probably not going to be as good.
There are tons of great movie scores out there, and I give them all their due, but I think they all bow to the altar of John Williams. Yeah. I think that's just how it goes.
70s and 80s, this guy was top of his game. Scored some of the most memorable themes ever, so can't take it away from that.
So again, this film has everything. It has great emotion, it has great comedy, great visuals, and then of course great music. So there's just really nothing you can say about this film unless you're just really being critical. That's just really detrimental to this film, right?
Yeah, I mean, I already talked about the ending might throw some people off. And for me, until it clicked for me, I did not like it. And that's kind of like my big beef before this was, as a kid and I guess as a young critic of sorts, I didn't understand it. But once you understand the tone and what it's going for, it's a very brilliant movie. And I wish they made more like this, but I guess if they did, then you wouldn't appreciate this one as much as I do.
And that's the thing. I think that this film is definitely, and I know this word's going to sound critical because we do say it in a critical way, but I think this film is very dated in a lot of ways. I think this film shows its age in a lot of ways. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think it's just the way things were at that point. And if you can understand that and appreciate that, like you said, I think this film is every bit the masterpiece that people say it is. I will definitely say that it is. Is it perfect? No. But what film is? I don't think there's a film out there that's perfect start to finish. But this film definitely deserves the masterpiece moniker. And I will continue to shout that till I'm no longer here. Very much fan of this film and will be. And so glad we finally got to it. So glad.
Me too. I enjoyed watching this film again. I wanted to watch it, I guess it was about a month ago. I was just hankering. Yeah. I want to watch Superman again. It's a great movie. And I'm glad I got to. And we'll tackle the second one a little bit later down the road. It's It's not as the same, but I mean, it's hard to.
It's worth talking about, I
It's
think.
definitely worth talking about. And I really like the villains in that one. They add a lot to it. So we'll come back later down the road if you're a Superman fan. And who knows, we might just get crazy, get drunk one day and watch Superman 4.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Hey, it can't be any worse than Batman and Robin.
I don't know.
And if you guys know what we're talking about, you know what we're talking about.
Yeah. But next episode, we're going to talk about something. It's a little bit different subject. It's not an individual film.
Yes.
We're going to be counting down our top 5 favorite films from a director that we both love a lot, and has just turned 96. And that is the filmography of Mel Brooks. What's your favorite?
Kids, if you have not heard of this comedic genius, go right now. Look him up, because he's fantastic. He has made a ton of films, and we're going to try our best to just break them down into our 5 favorites and talk about them. And now, again, there's going to be our personal opinion, so if you have difference of opinion, come at us on social media. That's at SuperCaZt with the Z, or our Facebook group, SuperCaZt. Just search SuperCaZt on Facebook and tell us your favorite 5 if you have 5 different ones. Me and my wife were talking about this. She's a huge Mel Brooks fan. Her top 5 was different than mine. I think yours and mine are pretty similar, but even ours, I think our number ones were different, so, you know. But that's what makes Mr. Brooks so great, and cannot wait to definitely celebrate him.
Yeah, it's going to be great, so tune in next time as we talk about it on the SuperCaZt.